What's up, Legendarium listeners? Kyle here, back with my Kyle Cosmere quest, uh, located in my delightfully unfinished basement. So, here we go. I had a couple of questions from the initial, what's it called? Newsletter. And I wanted to get to those first, and then we'll kind of cover a couple of our bases, and we'll go from there. I've got this new setup, and I've got this light like shining right in my face, and so we'll see how this goes. Uh, so, from Tomas, his question was, are you going to read everything, including short stories, novellas, everything regarding the Cosmere, or are you just going to stick to the main novels? And good news, Tomas, I am going to read everything. We decided we're going to do this whole thing. We're going to do all the short stories, all the novellas, anything related. In fact, as I'm starting off with Elantris, I got the 10th anniversary edition, which has 10,000 words of extra content. So, started out reading the foreword, there's extra Ars Arcanum stuff in here. I'm going to try to read it all. I don't promise that anything intelligent or new will come out of this, but you will get a first-timer's experience. We'll see how it goes. So, reading everything, including all the short stories. And then Zach had a question, and he said it might be kind of fun to hear any predictions or expectations that I've had based on what I've heard from either the other panelists or just heard around in the fantasy community. If he wanted me to share any expectations or predictions. Well, Zach, my expectations based on other panelists' enthusiasm regarding the Cosmere and other people that I've read is it is apparently the greatest thing ever written. So I guess my expectations have been set pretty high. Hopefully I don't let you down. I tend to be pretty hypercritical of things, and we'll see how that goes. Yeah, not that I'm very smart, I'm just kind of an asshole. That's what it is. So, expectations super high. I'm just barely into this, so I don't really have any predictions yet, but I'll try to share those as we go through. So, just to let you know, I was going to try to bang this out 5 chapters at a time, but I noticed that there's a pattern going on in Elantris where we have one chapter of Raoden, one chapter of Sarene, one chapter of Hrathen or Hrathen. I really don't know how to pronounce this stuff. Craig sent me a pronunciation guide. I'm working on it. We'll see how it goes. So because there was a lot of stuff up front with foreword and prologue stuff and extra content, I'm actually going to cover those things plus the first 3 chapters, and we'll go from there, and we'll see. I'll probably do it in chunks because I like the idea of following these 3 characters, but there's definitely a pattern. So I've read a little bit past chapter 3, but I'm going to stop at chapter 3, and I'll save 3 through probably 9 for the next one. So first initial thoughts, I'll probably kind of break these videos up in more of just like what stands out to me, likes and dislikes, and I'll probably have some things that I'll comment on writing style, because that's a big thing that I like to look at when I'm reading through stuff. So, couple things that stood out as I was reading the foreword by Dan Wells. I'm sure Craig is super jealous of the first signed book ever that Dan has from Brandon Sanderson, of Elantris. I guess it was the first edition, first signed book he's ever done. So kind of stood out, and I'm sure that Craig is drooling over that piece of memorabilia for his studio wall. I thought what was really interesting was his story about how the book originally was named Adonis instead of Elantris, and that they were super confused. Like in Brandon and Dan's reading group, they were super confused about the whole story idea, because a lot of them that were reading it were under the impression that it was somehow based on Greek or Roman mythology, and Brandon was super confused at why they were getting that, and just kind of stood out that he had named it Adonis, not realizing that that was actually a historical name or historical reference, and so he went and renamed it Elantris. And it was just kind of got me musing on the idea of ideas born from other ideas, and that there is no original idea, that we kind of just iterate and build off of those things. And it was just kind of funny to see that called out in this book, in the foreword. And these professional writers that have the same pitfalls or tendencies that we do as humans, just to like throw in things and assume that it's our own unique idea and not really know where that's coming from. So just musings, thought it was interesting. So a couple things that have stood out to me so far. Naming conventions, really difficult. In fact, I had to text the podcast and say, is Raoden pronounced Raoden or Raoden? Because I wasn't sure if the AO was AO or OW like it is in Chinese. So there's a lot of those naming convention type things that are weird. Anytime you jump into a new fantasy book, that's a hurdle for me. And so the first thing that stood out to me was these names and trying to get a grasp on those. Thanks, Craig, for the pronunciation guide. I'm sure I'll be using that quite a bit. But so, I mean, I'm not going to cover too much plot, but what is really interesting to me is the whole idea of the transformation. The idea that Elantris was this godly city before, and now, and people used to be able to kind of be transcended or lifted up into this godlike state to be able to go to Elantris. And now I love the idea that that's flipped on its head, and now it's kind of like this curse. I don't love the idea that it's seemingly random. Now, maybe that's a prediction for you, Zach, is that I think that at some point this is going to get explained, that it's not actually random. There's a reason behind it. But so far it's been introduced as completely random. And I don't know that I love that idea, but we're rolling with it. Obviously, Chapter 1, Raoden gets transformed. I thought that was interesting. I actually tweeted or I sent a text to Craig. We were talking a little bit about openings, and he was like, "Oh, this is such a strong opening," and I agree, but I mostly agree. It was a little bit jarring for me. It felt a little bit rushed, to be honest. The opening to this book feels more like a Star Wars crawl, where you get this scene set really quickly, and there's a whole bunch of backstory and context that you have to have in order to even wrap your mind around this scene. And that's kind of what the prologue felt like to me. It was like, here, let me just force feed you a whole bunch of context so that the next thing, when Raoden wakes up, it actually makes at least somewhat sense to you. Not that that's a bad thing. Obviously, it's worked for a long time, and obviously this is super successful. It just felt a little quick for me, but it wasn't that it was bad. I really enjoyed it. I'm super intrigued by what's going on. Raoden wakes up, he's been transformed, and then he's immediately off to Elantris and has to deal with that, which was really kind of crazy. Runs into Galadon. I'm going to call him our gal pal from now on. And, I mean, he is just thrown into it right away, where he sees the downtroddenness that is Elantrians, that they try to attack him, that they totally kill that kid for his food, and then he gets to the realization that like there's this eternal, I want to say damnation, but like there's this eternal agony. So like he stubs his toe, and his toe pain won't go away, and he's, that whole idea is really fascinating to me. So I'm excited to see where that goes, and you just feel bad for Elantrians, man. That sucks. So Raoden, I'm honestly, out of the three main characters that have been introduced, I'm the least intrigued by Raoden so far. I feel like his introduction was a little bit rushed. I don't really care about him all that much yet. It's just kind of like, hey, here's this prince, and you should feel bad for him because now he's cursed and he's thrown in the thick of things. Really interesting setting, really interesting ideas. Don't care all that much about Raoden yet. Sarene, I actually feel for. Really interesting ideas along the lines of marriage. The idea that she's married to Raoden but has never met him. And as I was reading this, I was like, wait a minute. You learn about her relationship and that she'd been talking to him or whatever, and is legally married to this guy that she's never met, and she shows up in this city and he's dead and all this kind of stuff. And I thought to myself, after the whole scene where, the first thing that we see with magic is like this floating ball of light with Sarene's servant, I don't remember their name, but you see that, and then you see like this weird like human ball transformation into her dad, and she's like on the phone with her dad, and super weird, but really cool, really interesting. But like my first thought was like, hang on a minute, her dad's talking about how she'd been writing letters and been talking to Raoden, but and she'd like fallen in love with him, and I'm like, did Sarene just get like freaky deaky catfished here, and now she's in this foreign country and like not really sure what to do, Manti Teo style? But we're rolling with it. I felt like the pacing with Sarene's chapter and Hrathen's chapter was a little bit more my speed. I didn't feel quite as rushed, and so I was able to kind of connect with their situation a little bit better than I think with Raoden. But yeah, really interesting. I really liked the relationship with Sarene and her dad that they were showing. I like that she has all these like pet names and nicknames. I don't know if it's Sarene or if it's Een or Ain. I don't know how it's pronounced, but I like that. Being a dad myself, I have a million nicknames for my kids. And then Licky Stick is Craig's prison nickname. No, Lecky Stick. Just kind of these dumb little nicknames that you have for your kids, and I thought that was a really humanistic way to ground this character. But yeah, kind of she's tossed into an interesting situation. There's a lot of this like she wants to stay because she wants to mess around with the nobles and see what's going on and the way that their dad was acting. And it's like she's gonna be up to some stuff, and so I'm really excited to follow her story and see how she's gonna peel back the layers to find out what actually happened to Raoden and whether or not there's some kind of rescue, or what does that do with the actual marriage? Does that void it? Does that empower her in some way? And I'm really curious about the magic, because we haven't really seen very much about the magic other than, like I said, these floating balls and weird telephone stuff. FaceTiming with magic. I don't know. Yeah, so I'm excited for her. I'm excited for Hrathen. I feel like we're setting up a villain here. And Delof, like how he kind of pledges his loyalty to Hrathen, or that's how I'm pronouncing it, guys. Sorry, we're rolling with it. I'm curious about this whole idea of the church is going to come in and either conquer, or, I mean, there's some kind of crusade going on. He's been charged by the Holy Prophet to go and convert the city in 3 months, and that never goes right or well, and so we'll see how that rolls. I like the setup here of belief systems that Sanderson's doing. I really like that it's very obvious that there's a group out there that are devout, and that our main setting in Elantris and also Arladon, that place, are heathens, I guess. They're not followers, they're unbelievers, if you will. And so there's always that really interesting dynamic between good versus evil, or perceived good versus perceived evil. And I like that it's not... I sense this fate of the world thing with Jadeth and the Empire and all that coming down, but I like that it can be something as small as Hrathen, condemning his priest. Or I like to see, there's always that, like, the church is in on something. Are they really holy or are they not? I'm getting really creepy churchy vibes from this guy, especially Delof and his whole defiance or whatever, fervor and devoutedness. I don't know. That's not a word, but hey, we're going. So yeah, I mean, I think overall I'm super excited. I'm super intrigued by 2 out of 3 of the characters, but I'm also really intrigued by Raoden's setting. I think Elantris' setting, and I'm interested to hear more about Galadon and what he's about. But like I said, I'll like to get to know Raoden more. I just don't feel like I got the same vibe as I did with Sarene or Hrathen. A couple things on writing style real quick. I know I'm kind of going over time, and this is totally rambly and just info dump, and if you've made it this far, good for you. I appreciate it, but also, like, you are a very tolerant person of this. Interesting things that have stood out to me about writing style. Feels a little over dramatic in places. Feels a little heavy handed with the way that things are described, but at the same time it's very utilitarian. So Sanderson is getting to the point. He's going to tell you what to pay attention to, and he's just going to lay it out there. There's not really subtle nuance. One of the things that stood out was when Raoden starts to transform, and he's having that whole scene where he's like, I woke up and I'm super hungry, and he rings the bell to have somebody come in and bring him breakfast. And I think the way that he describes it is like the servant walks in and gasps and drops the tray on the floor, and Raoden's confused, and the way that it's written, it says, and then he saw his hand. And it just seems a little obvious, or a little too, like, to the point. There wasn't really much surprise, or there wasn't really, you don't see him do that. You're getting told that he's doing that. It very much feels like I'm being told a story, especially in that opening chapter. I think I got a little bit less of that as I kind of sunk in. And to be fair, this might just be me starting a new thing that I'm not super used to. And so we'll leave it at that. But yeah, definitely feels much more like I'm being told a story and not quite experiencing a story. In fact, the thing I wanted to read right off the page was the very first line in chapter 1. Prince Raoden of Arlon awoke early that morning, completely unaware that he had been damned for all eternity. That feels very narrator-y, and then we go into kind of that third person limited, where you get into Raoden's mind a little bit. It was a little jarring, to be honest. It just felt too, like, here's the author telling me this thing, and then here's me trying to make that jump immediately into character's mind. Could be wrong, just sharing how it felt. But yeah, the whole idea between I'm being told a story versus seeing it through a character's eyes. Another example of this is when he's running away, when Raoden's running away from the guys in Elantris, and it says, he ran madly, expecting his breath to run short and a pain to stab him in the side, as usually happened when he overextended himself. Neither occurred. Now, I've never run away from bad guys, but I've never, anytime I've been running, I've never had that immediate thought of, I'm running for my life away from all of these terrible things. This is really strange that I don't have a side ache right now. I think that's just showing debut novel, new writer type of things. You're being told an observation rather than seeing the observation, or like the idea that maybe he ran and then he passed out, or he ran so far that he just fell, and that as he was laying there, he was like, I didn't feel anything, any signals. My body didn't give me any signals to stop. Subtle difference, but it kind of threw me off a little bit. And then the final thought I'm going to throw out there on writing style, super critical. So like I told you, Zach, I'm pretty critical. So here we go. Word choice was a little strange. I thought, for me, and anybody feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm not representing this the right way, I apologize, and also feel free to correct me. In the holy script, or in the scroll that Hrathen reads, and his kind of holy charge to go and convert all, I think he says, convert all the pagan nations, or something like that. Pagan was a really odd word choice for me. Fantasy fantasy world, building a brand new world, new religion, new everything. And pagan is a very earthly, this world Christian term. As far as any research that I did, and I literally did like 5 minutes of it. So again, please correct me if I'm wrong. Origins of that word really didn't start having any religious connotations until it was specifically referenced in the Middle Ages as a non-believer, specifically for Christ or for the God of the Bible. Semantics, maybe being nitpicky, whatever. Just pagan seemed an odd word. I feel like there's other words out there that you could use. Threw me off a little bit when I'm supposed to be learning about a new religion, new magic system, new world, and it brought me back to this world. Probably nitpicky, but there it is. Overall, super, super excited about this one. I think there's plenty of intrigue. I'm really curious to see how Sarene and her politics and being in with the nobility is going to interact with Mr. Churchy Church Hrathen and what his objective is. You've always got that church and state mixture that happens. You've got your Cardinal Richelieu and your Three Musketeers, messing with the king and that kind of stuff. So curious about those storylines. Very curious to see what happens with Raoden and to peel back more history of Elantris. Super excited to see this one unfold. Yeah, very happy. So next time we will get into probably chapters 4 through 9-ish. Like I said, since it's broken up, it's already broken up in like 3, a character per chapter, and it kind of goes in 3s, at least so far that I can see. I'm going to try to stick to something similar like that. We'll get updates on Raoden, Sarene, and Delof/Hrathen as we go through. And I'll just kind of bring you along with me for the ride. Yeah, again, let me know if you have any comments or thoughts. Let me know how wrong I was. Please try to keep it spoiler-free if you can. Like I said in the first video, I'm not super worried about that, but it would be nice to experience it for the first time firsthand. Plus, you all can laugh at me and how much of an idiot I am in the early chapters. Like, oh, he has no idea what's going on. Wait till he gets to X chapter and he'll be blown away. But yeah, hit me up with questions, comments, insults, whatever it is. Follow us, follow the conversation on Reddit, listen to the podcast, support on Patreon, do all those fun things, and I'll hit you guys up with another video next week. Subscribe to the YouTube channel because these should be living on YouTube, and don't beat me up too bad. All right, thanks guys, we'll see ya.